We are just 9 days away from the NHL trade deadline, and typically it's around this time that things start to really heat up. So we're going to dive into all of the trade rumors and get a little temperature check here on the latest on the fourth period, presented by CCM Hockey. I'm your host, Kate Pedersen, and I'm joined by David Pagnotta. Dave, give it to us here. Is the temperature heating up the way we expect, or are we still kind of washing the waters? Stay warm right now?
Well, I'd say lukewarm right now, Kate. It hasn't started to boil just yet. And talking to GMs and some scouts and even agents across the league this morning, even, they still categorize things right now as quiet. Now, 8, 9, 10 days ahead of the deadline, that's usually where we're at. Everyone's kind of playing chicken. They want to see who's going to budge first, who's going to make the first call. But right now, that's where we're at. Things will pick up. There has been a lot of talk, but in terms of actual activity, things are quiet for the time being, despite a tiny trade earlier today. So I expect that to pick up, but that's kind of where we're at right now from a temperature gauge perspective.
Well, one team that we've talked about a lot and thrown a lot of names around, to be quite frank, is Seattle.
Yeah.
Oliver Bjorkstrand, Jared McCann, Jamie Alexiak, to name a few. But Yanni Gourde, coming back from injury, do we think he might be an option? What do we think's going on there in Seattle?
Yeah, there are teams that would certainly like to get their hands on Yanni Gourde. He's on an expiring deal like Brandon Tanev, but they're a little bit different. The expectation is Tanev will be moved by the deadline, and Yanni Gourde right now is in a 50-50 slot. We've talked about this before earlier on in the season. Seattle would like to hold on to him, but they haven't really fully gauged where that's going to go just yet from a contract side of things. So there are teams interested. He is expected to be back in the lineup next week ahead of the deadline, so that could spice things up a little bit. But everyone's kind of waiting to see what the future is with Yanni Gourde in Seattle. If they feel they can't get him locked in, they'll likely move him. But a guy like Tanev, the expectation is he will be moved. And some of the other players you mentioned, yeah, Seattle's willing to listen on just about anybody.
Well, maybe it was you trying to spice things up here in your latest column, saying that you think Dallas is going big game hunting. They're
Yeah.
out without Miro Heiskanen. They could move him to the LTIR to create some extra cap space there and make a big splash. So I wonder, what do you think? What was the story behind that column? And then also, what is Heiskanen's status? Where does he stand right now with regards to his injury?
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound good from a regular season perspective. I've been told he's done for the season. He could be out until maybe the end of the first round, maybe beginning of the second, depending on how things go there. And by utilizing his 8.45 million cap hit, by placing him on LTIR, it frees up that much more money for them to really make a big move or a big splash, or perhaps a couple ahead of the deadline. They've already made a bit of a splash. They added Granlund, they added Ceci on the back end, but they're looking at other options. Now, there have been certainly links to Seth Jones. There's no secret that he would love to go to Dallas. They've got to kind of figure things out there. There were reports of Erik Karlsson. I can tell you, I looked into that one. I don't see a fit between Dallas and Pittsburgh for Erik Karlsson. Um, I was told that's likely, very likely, not going to happen. But Seth Jones is certainly a possibility out there for Dallas if they can make things work. Chicago's willing to retain, but they have other teams in the mix as well. Florida has interest in him. We've heard about Colorado as well. So we'll see kind of where things go there. But Dallas is in a position with already over $4 million in cap space right now because of Tyler Seguin's LTIR usage. They could add that much more. Brock Nelson on their radar too. We'll see what Dallas ends up doing. But if they want to make a big splash, they have the capabilities to do it. And ownership has said, hey, go get us whatever you need to try to win a championship.
All right. Well, over in Boston, we've talked about them wanting to make some moves for a while now. Some of the names: Trent Frederic, Justin Brazeau. What do you think is happening in Boston? Who's on the move, and what are they looking for?
Yeah, they're in an interesting position because they've kind of admitted defeat this season, but they still want to stay in the mix. So with Brazeau, with Frederic, those are two guys available. They're going to look at the options from a trade market side of things to see where things go from there. Now, Frederic was banged up in the game last night, so we'll see what his status fully is. But there is a lot of interest in him. There's a lot of interest in Brazeau to add to, a fourth line, a big body presence there, and he's had a good season when he's been in the lineup. So they have a couple options, as they start to focus on next season more so than anything, without Hampus Lindholm in the back end, and obviously, the season for McAvoy is also in question.
All right, well, let's end things with Ottawa. They're in that Eastern Conference wildcard race, and we did talk earlier about them looking for a mid-six forward. Are they still in the market for that? And what are they going to do in terms of cap space? Because they don't have much to work with. So what do you think is sort of the best case scenario for them right now?
Yeah, if they can get creative and add somebody in their mid-six, that's something they'd love to do. We've talked about it before, going back to Seattle. Brandon Tanev is an interest of interest, for Ottawa. There are a few other players that are there. Ryan Donato with a $2 million cap hit out of Chicago. He's also a player they're interested in. If they could find someone in that mid-six role, but likely to play in the bottom six, that's something that they would like to do. They'd like to do more, but as you mentioned, they don't have the cap flexibility to do that, not at the time being anyway. They are looking to move out Bernard Docker on the back end. He's been available, so that might be a way to free up a little bit of space, roster space, and potentially the cap as well. But Ottawa's looking. They'd like to add. They're right in the thick of things right now as we record this. They're 2 points out of a wild card spot. Steve Staios is going to try to add to his team to give them extra chances and extra ammunition to secure a playoff spot.
All right, well, thanks for all of this, Dave. We have this date circled in the calendar, March 7th, the NHL trade deadline. Lukewarm waters right now, but certainly expected to heat up over the next week or so, and hopefully give us some good stuff to talk about. That would be fun. Thanks so much, and thank you to everyone for watching here. It's the latest on the fourth period, presented by CCM Hockey.